there are some differences between the two cultures, obviously. One of the great differences, I would have to say, is the sort of the religious fervor. Whether a person be Muslim, whether he be Christian, whether he practices voodoo, he has a very strong sense of that there is a supreme being, that there is a God of some sort who is guiding his life, and is guiding what's going to happen, and sometimes that got turned into, he's going to do everything, so I don't have to work because I don't have to work on what I want, because he'll make what he wants happen. But for the most part, it was a real strength to a lot of members, because they already had this deep faith that God was out there, that he was looking out for them, that he loved them. And it really, that faith, I believe, has helped people in Africa to get, or at least in Benin particularly, to get through some incredible hardships that I don't think most Americans have had to deal with. Generally, they're thankful for just the little things. They are a lot more thankful for the things that get them from day to day, because their day-to-day life is so much more important. So when we would be saying prayers when we would be praying with our investigators, we would see a lot more prayers for thank you for the shade, thank you for just the little things, that thank you for this food. And it was humbling to see in some cases that these people really did not have much, but they were so very thankful for it. And they had this sense of there's a sense that you shouldn't hold back from somebody else if you had something, because if you held back, everybody knew that life was a cycle, and that you may be up top now, but at some time you're going to be in a tough spot too. And so even people that didn't have very much were still often willing to share what they had, because they knew that they had the possibility that they too would need that at some point in the potentially near future. And obviously there were obviously exceptions to that, but that was the general feel I got of their culture, was that they were a little bit more willing to work and help each other out, because they knew that one day that might be them.
West Africa is in the countries that are pretty small countries, so there's pretty good diverse people, like a lot of Nigerians, Ghanaians, and you can tell that they're Nigerian because they can speak English, but it's like Nigerian English. It's way different. I know they have Pidgin English, and they call it English, but they could be having a Pidgin English conversation right in front of you, and you're like, I don't even know what they're saying. Ghanaians, is pretty less thicker African accents. I see it as more, you can understand them more. There are a lot of Muslims, and a lot of times I often found that Muslims were just some of the nicest people to us. Sometimes you knock on a door and they open up, and you see Muslim posters on the wall, and you're kind of like, dang it. But they're always like, yeah, come on in. I mean, not every time. Sometimes they're like, oh, we're Muslim, and you're kind of like, oh yeah, keep doing what you're doing. They're like, yeah, you too. So kind of part ways. Sometimes they're like, I kind of do want to know more, and then you kind of talk, and they're like, I was born in this. I'm not really looking to change. I was just interested, and you're like, yeah, no problem. So just there to talk to them. I mean, there have been Muslim conversions and stuff, where they changed from Muslim to Christian. Voodoo, there's a lot of kind of voodoo influences there. I would say that there's less voodoo in Togo as in Benin, because in Benin it was It's like the birthplace of it. Is you can kind of tell, families that have been involved in voodoo because they kind of have marks and kind of scars on their face. Don't exactly know what they mean. It's kind of they little scratches and stuff, and you'll see some I've seen some crazy straight up gouges, and you're just kind of like, whoa. Voodoo is usually practiced by the natives. It's going to be usually Nigerians or something that's practicing it, but walking around, and it is usually in the lower end that people practice voodoo. I mean, if you were to walk around, there are sections where they're bigger houses. I kind of feel like if you didn't live in kind of a shack, one room thing, you kind of lived in a huge house. That's kind of how it is. You'd be walking, there'd be a giant mansion, and next to it, surrounded by lower houses, one room houses. And it's not often that you see people practicing voodoo that live in the houses. So they usually are more Christian based, but it's not necessarily makes it easier because sometimes they're usually Catholic. Never actually saw anything performed or anything, but they'd have their little voodoo idols, which is usually twisted metal. It's usually metal objects with wax, and they'd burn them, and it wasn't dolls and things like that they would think. They do have that, but for the most part you'd see, it's kind of voodoo when you walk into what's called a parcel. What a parcel is kind of a little courtyard with maybe it's an L-shaped building with every family has their own room, and there might be a little idol off to the right, so you're oh well, not everyone, but voodoo is practiced here and stuff like that. There were a few times when I was kind of around it, talking to some people. I remember one particular instance, I was talking to this guy, and he's almost 7 feet tall, big dude, kind of reminded me of Shaq. But I was he was really big, deep voice, and I was man, this dude could eat me, throw me, and I don't know, there's lots of voodoo stuff around, and I just felt really comfortable. I think that was the only time that I was yeah, I think we should go. I went to painting. I was I'm not feeling it. But for the most part, I didn't feel that or feel unsafe or anything. I guess some culture tips and everything. Like I said, with the water is use your judgment, but for the most part you'll be fine. Even if a lot of times I'll be no thanks, and they're come on, you have to drink some water. So you kind of just take it, put it up to your lips, and act like you're gulping, and then just pass it, and you're oh thanks. So I've done that a lot of times where I just didn't even drink it and just passed it, but act like I did. If you finish your food, they will put more on your plate. So you gotta just be kind of tactful with that for your own sake, just because you're completely full, you're it was good, but they'll give you more, and if you don't eat it, they'll kind of get mad. So you'd be I don't know, you just gotta figure it out with that person. It's different from every person. Sometimes some people are I'm full, it was so good, thank you, and they're okay. Some people are really pushy, and a lot of times where I just felt I was gonna throw up walking out of there. It's oh my gosh, I ate so much food. I feel for the most part the thing to kind of do is to talk about Jesus. They're oh yeah, you talk about Jesus, so do I. I like Jesus. And you're oh cool. And then just kind of talking with people, eventually you get pretty good at kind of discerning who's kind of just messing with you, who's just there to just talk, not really bash, but just they're not really interested, although they just like to talk about Jesus. They like to show that they talk about Jesus, as opposed to those who are actually interested. I feel there's lots of Muslims, there's lots of voodoo, but there's also it's pretty Christian based. Catholic is huge down there. Lots of Catholics. Even people would be oh, I'm Catholic Muslim. It's well, what does that mean? They're well, my mom's Catholic, but my dad's Muslim. So you're kind of so what does that mean? I don't know what you're talking about. I talked to a French person that was there once, and he just didn't believe in God. and he was the most hard. He was like, I was like, I don't even know what to say right now, because like my whole mission, everyone knows who like God is, and you're just not used to explaining to like someone who claims to be atheist what God is. So just it was. I just had the hardest time, and nothing happened because I was like, I don't even know what to say. But you know, everyone has that base. I never once met someone that was like, I've never heard of Jesus or something like that. Like everyone's heard of Jesus. Everyone's believes in some sort of deity. So that was cool, I guess. I mean, opposed to the European missions where everyone's atheist. It's like, with investigators, you had to be pretty good at seeing, when people would progress. It's not like the European missions where, you stick with one investigator for years and years. It's kind of like, hey, they're not reading, they're not coming to church, like they're not really doing anything. Gotta drop them. And you drop them because you can find someone else. And it's usually, I wouldn't say it's easy, it's not easy, but there's definitely room to find people